Murray, I want to tell you a story tonight. There once was this guy, when he was a child, he dreamed of being a professional baseball player, but that didn't work out. In all his life, his parents said, you got to go to college. You got to make something of yourself. He'd be the first one in his family to go, so he did. And he studied very hard, as you might know, and he got through college. And he decided, well, if baseball didn't work, I'm going to be a lawyer, finest thing you can be. So he decided to go to law school, and he worked really hard, and he became very passionate about being a prosecutor. And he got a job at a prosecutor's office right out of law school. And this guy, he worked so hard, and he had such a hard work ethic that he just worked up the ranks, and he became the chief deputy running the entire office in a very short period of time. But just like the story with Icarus, he flew too close to the sun, and he started to go through burnout. He started to hate his job and become cynical about the system, and things started to bother him. And one day, when he didn't know what to do, when he didn't know what was next, he went back home to his family for Christmas, and he saw his best friend Magoo. And Magoo came to the Christmas dinner, and he was very happy. And the man said, Magoo, why are you so happy? You have a stressful job too. And Magoo said, you know what? I've decided I'm going to leave the rat race behind, and I'm going to try to find something that I'm passionate about. I'm going to go all in on it. I'm going to make that work. And the guy said, wow, that sounds amazing. Teach me, Magoo. Then Magoo taught him everything he learned in the classes he'd been to. And the guy was so excited that they decided to do a podcast called The Dumpster Fire Project.
Here we are.
Everybody lived happily ever after. Yes. Murray, I'm talking about the SB7 format. We're building a story brand by Donald Miller that Samantha told us to read on our last episode as our homework, and I'm blown away. I hope what that did was keep our listeners for more than 10 seconds on the podcast and YouTube video to help us grow this channel. So we're going to see if this works, because we went right into it.
Before we do get started, if you've listened to us or if you're new, please hit the like, subscribe button. I don't know where it's at. It's somewhere on the screen here, but thumbs up, follow us, give us some likes, and
Please
give us some love for the work we put into this.
And if you're new or you didn't watch or listen to last week's episode, go back and check it out before you listen to this right now. Pause it. Well, do it for like 30 more seconds, then pause it so we don't get dinged on the algorithm. Go back and listen to that episode, because we had Samantha Knock, a copywriter who analyzed our websites, told us all the stuff that we were doing wrong, and she recommended that we read Donald Miller's book, Building a Story Brand. So far, I'm about 100 pages in already. Game changing. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight, is what Samantha taught us last week, and how we've had a chance now, had a week to go study up on some of this stuff and how it's affected our side hustles, our side businesses. So Murray, why don't we start with you? After last week's episode with Samantha, what, how did you take her advice, and what have you done to implement some of that stuff so far?
Yeah, so the first thing I did was went out and got this book because Samantha had mentioned that she was a chef turned copywriter. So this book was like just invaluable to her. And that told me that it's something that anybody can pick up and start implementing and actually become really good at it.
Samantha really dinged you on your website on not having a clear message. That's like one of the first things that the book talks about, is making sure that someone within the first few seconds of going to your website should be able to say, what is this person trying to sell? And it gives some examples about, like a painter that was at a workshop that had this fancy business, and they thought it was like an Italian restaurant or something. It's like, how about you change your title on the front screen to "I paint a bunch of shit"?
Dude, that was the exact thing that stuck in my head too. I was like, out of all the examples out of the first 3 or 4 chapters that I listened to, that's the exact one that I remembered too. Samantha had given us some homework based on the book, so she was very kind to give us actual very specific pointers. So I took everything that she gave me on my website and I went and implemented it. And most of it was, I had created a landing page for my side hustle, and it didn't really explain what I was doing. And I did that intentionally, but I'm far enough along now where I need to start telling my story if I'm going to try and sell something and ramp up.
Yeah.
I've proven the concept of the product itself. Now it's time to get into the sales and marketing side and really scale up. So the first thing I did was, instead of just having a spot with a couple lines of verbiage and then having a email sign up, I actually told a little bit more about the company and all and I had done that in a couple different spots. So I lengthened the story, gave some details. I still tried to keep it somewhat concise because I don't want to necessarily bore anyone yet. The book has some good pointers on the length and how to tell that story. But for now, it was a first run at it based on what Samantha had told me. So I did that on the home page, so the first screen when you go there. And what I had also done is she had given me some tips on the product that I'm building. Specifically, Paulite Pup is really good. Or she said it was, is a lot better than the home screen, but there are still some other pointers about how you want to change the content so it makes the person feel like the hero, or they are the hero, and you're just there to guide them and give them whatever tools they need. So I modified that one a little bit. Well, there wasn't as much work there.
And I stress in my classes the importance of telling a story, but I've never really thought about some of the things I'm already seeing in this book. That's been my biggest takeaway so far. Is I love the fact that this book, um, it's it. I know that I don't know a lot about the author yet. I'm getting some information. Apparently, he was a screenwriter and an author. He's a storyteller, and he figured out a way that human beings lock onto a story, how our brains work, and how he could make that work for marketing, which tells me it could work for just about anything. So I have all kinds of ideas about it. But for me, as far as it applies to my business, I, even the first few chapters, have decided that I'm doing a total Detroit Lions rebuild on the thing. I am tearing my website down to the ground and I'm starting all over again. There's a couple other reasons because I'm pivoting in the directions I want to go with some of my courses that are available. Um, but I'm going to finish this book. I really want to get. I mean, I wanted this thing to be like a Bible. It's going to be a lot of notes. It's going to be note cards. I'm very fascinated by storytelling. I've always been a big fan of storytelling. It's how you develop your brand. It's how you win in the courtroom. And so this book is just incredibly fascinating to me. The big thing that have taken out of it is the fact that he has got the formula down. When I did my intro and I did my little story about how we started this podcast, you'll notice I started off with a little background history about our hero, the young man who starts off with his promising career and then suffers burnout. And then he meets the guide who teaches him how to do a side hustle. And they start this podcast together. So he gives him a plan, gives him the call of action, and then everything ends happily ever after. That's the Reader's Digest version of the SB7 formula that he talks about, which is the how to tell a story formula. Also, I should mention, since we're halfway through here, we've mentioned Samantha's name a bunch of times. Go back and watch that episode from last week or listen to it. And we're talking about Samantha Knock from samanthaknock.com, a copywriter, clearly very bright, clearly someone not only that you can bring in to do your copywriting for you if this is just overwhelming, but someone you can also work with as a consultant. I would pay her as a consultant to teach us. I'd pay her a good amount of money to teach us what she taught us last week on that episode. So if you want some good free advice, definitely want to go listen to that episode last week. But going forward, Murray, Samantha's advice that she gave us, looking at this book, what are your plans with and how you're going to implement this with your business going forward?
I'm going to go through, and the item that I mentioned where I'm doing the analytics, I actually have a hidden page that I'm sending people to that will, so that way you can't just go on and click. So when I'm doing my outreach, it sends people to this page that I'm trialing using this new process that I've created with all the new verbiage and being the storyteller, to see if I can get somebody to actually click that link, and I can have multiple hidden pages. So I'm actually going to try and tell this story 3 different ways and then send it out to out of my CRM. I'll send each story to a third of that and then see which one populates the best. And then I can always wrap back around and send the one that's the highest to the other 2/3. So a lot of storytelling and analytics in my future.
So Murray and I are talking about storytelling, everybody. We're talking about what Samantha told us to do, which is read Donald Miller's book, Building a Story Brand. And I'm with you. You've already made some changes to your website, right? It sounds like you've already
Yep, they're
started to
live.
implement some of this stuff.
I almost did
Fantastic.
some before and afters so we could show them on here, but I got so excited I forgot to do the befores. So either way, you can go see where it's standing now, or maybe we could do it for the podcast one. We'll take some screenshots of the
Yeah.
before and
The
afters.
YouTube video. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah. One of the things I should mention that too, that we're going to try. We're going to try to focus more. This is a podcast. We're going to push the podcast. It'll still be available on YouTube. but I think you will get more out of this when you're listening to us, listen to Murray's sexy voice, taking you on that morning drive to work. We're going to keep these things under 30 minutes so you can get it all in. So that's what we're talking about there. But yeah, storytelling. That's what we're talking about here, and that's been my big takeaway from Samantha's advice is even though she's a copywriter, the main skill of a copywriter is storytelling. That's a skill that I've worked on my entire career as an attorney, but it was really nice to see in this book. Really quick, Reader's Digest version, you heard me mention it in my intro there. The book is obviously, I'm paraphrasing and very much simplifying this, but all stories in some way, shape, or form, all successful stories, because we've all watched crappy movies. And if you think about it, they probably don't have these elements. But number one, you have a character. Number two, that character faces a problem, internal problem sometimes, philosophical, or an external problem. Batman runs into Bane. That's a problem. Then your character meets a guide, someone that comes in to help them. Think about all the movies we've watched. When you think about it, there's always that person that helps your main character, but they're not the hero of the story. They're the guide helping the hero. They create a plan and a call to action, which the character then follows, and then it usually leads to success or failure. Most of the time, success, because that's what makes a good story. This book tells you to take that format and bring that into your business and use that to market your brand.